Hello and welcome to Shay's Tech Academy. In this tutorial, we will cover if statements in Python. We'll be covering the basics of if statements in Python programming. We'll cover what if statements are, how they work, and we'll do some example to learn how to use them. First question is what is an if statement and in what context they can be used. An if statement is a conditional statement that is used to execute certain code only if a certain condition is true. If the condition is false, the code inside the if statement will not be executed. The basic syntax of an if statement in Python is as follows. The condition can be any valid Python expression that returns a Boolean value, true or false. The code inside the if statement must be indented and typically consists of one or more statements. Let's start with a simple example. Suppose we have a variable x and we want to print a message if x is greater than 10. Here's how we could do that using an if statement. In this example, the condition x greater than 10 is true because our variable x is set to 15. So the code inside the if statement, which is just a print statement, will be executed and the message x is greater than 10 will be printed. Now let's look at an example that uses an else statement as well. Suppose we have a variable y and we want to print a message if y is greater than 10 and a different message if it is not. Here's how we could do that using an if statement with an else clause. In this example, the condition I greater than 10 is false because our variable I is set to 8, which is less than 10. So the code inside the else statement will be executed and the message I is not greater than 10 will be printed. Let's have a look at an example that uses multiple if statements. Suppose we have a variable z and we want to print a message depending on its value. Here's how we could do that using an if statement with multiple if clauses. In this code, we are using an if statement to check the value of the variable z and execute different code blocks based on its value. Here's a breakdown of what's happening. So, we start by assigning the value 5 to the variable z. The first if statement checks if z is equal to 0. If the condition is true, the code block within this if statement is executed and it prints z is 0. If the first condition is false, the program moves to the next if statement, which checks if z is equal to 1. If this condition is true, the code block within this if statement is executed and it prints z is 1. If the second condition is also false, the program moves to the next if statement, which checks if z is equal to 2. If this condition is true, the code block within this if statement is executed, and it prints z is 2. If none of the previous conditions are true, meaning z is neither 0, 1, nor 2, the program executes the else statement. The code block within the else statement is executed, and it prints z is not 0, 1, or 2. Let's do an example where we ourselves give an input. Suppose we have a program that prompts the user to enter a number, and we want to check if the number is even or odd. Here's how we could do that using an if statement. In this example, we use the module operator %sign to check if the remainder of num divided by 2 is equal to 0. If it is, then num is even, and we print the message num is even. Otherwise, num is odd, and we print the message num is odd. Let's check out another example, and this time we suppose we have a list of numbers, and we want to print only the positive numbers in the list. Here's how we could do that using an if statement. In this example, we use a for loop to iterate over each number in the list numbers. Inside the loop, we use an if statement to check if the current number is greater than 0. If it is, we print the number. In this case, the value for number we have it set to 2. This means it will print the numbers from 3 to 6, since our condition is being considered as true. Let's keep moving on and do a few more examples, so get the hang of these if-else statements. Now let's assume we have a program that asks the user to enter a password, and we want to check if the password meets certain criteria. For example, it must be at least 8 characters long and contain at least one uppercase letter. Here's how we could do that using an if statement. In this code, we first prompt the user to enter a password using the input function and store it in the password variable. Then we use an if statement to check various conditions about the password. For example, the first condition checks if the length of the password is less than 8 characters. If it is, it prints a message stating that the password is too short. Let's check this by entering a random password which has less than 8 characters. So we get this error as expected since our password is too short. The second condition uses the isLower method to check if all characters in the password are lowercase. If this condition is true, it means the password does not contain at least one uppercase letter, so it prints a message accordingly. Let's try that out now, and we will see that we get an error message saying we used no uppercase letters. Finally, if none of the above conditions are met, it means the password has a length of at least 8 characters and contains at least one uppercase letter. Hence, it is considered valid, and the code prints a message stating that the password is valid. Let's do one last example to finish off this lesson. Let's consider a real-world scenario where an if statement can be used determining the eligibility of a customer for a discount based on their purchase amount. Here's an example. I have added comments after each line here, just so you understand what each line is supposed to do. So let's go through step by step to see what we are doing here. We start by defining the customer's purchase amount, purchase_amount, and the minimum purchase amount required for a discount, discount_threshold. The if statement, if purchase_amount greater than equals discount_threshold, checks if the purchase amount is greater than or equal to the discount threshold. If it is, the condition evaluates to true, and the code block within the if statement is executed. Inside the if statement, we calculate the discount amount, discount, as 10% of the purchase amount. We then subtract the discount from the purchase amount to get the final amount, final_amount. We use the print statement to display a congratulatory message to the customer, showing the discount amount and the final amount after the discount. If the condition in the if statement is false, indicating that the purchase amount is below the discount threshold, the code block within the else statement is executed. In this case, we display a message informing the customer that their purchase amount doesn't meet the minimum requirement for a discount. So if I run this now, it will straight away go the else block and execute that. This will give us a message that our amount does not meet the minimum requirement for a discount because the purchase amount is set to 75, which is less than the actual discount threshold. Now if we change that purchase amount to, let's say, 110 and rerun the program, then it will execute the first if block since the customer is now eligible for a discount. In this case, it will print a congratulation message and tell us that we are eligible for a discount of $11, and once the discount is applied, the final amount would be $99. This should make it more interesting for you at this stage to know how the if-else statements work and in what sort of context you could use them. Remember this discount exercise as an example. Well, that's it for this tutorial on if-else statements in Python. We've covered the basics of if statements, including their syntax and some examples of how they can be used. With this knowledge, you should be able to start using if statements in your own Python programs. Let's catch up in the next lesson, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notifications for more Python tutorials.